So this is the last session for this evening, and for me the last session of this conference. I've been told that we have today to see what are some of the important points that we need to jot down together to bring about an action plan. And I thought that in the last 2 days there were a number of issues raised on policy that probably we would need to discuss. And having had so many suggestions, probably it's important just to refresh. I've just noted down a few. One was, the first point which was made was that the issue of mountain environmental and development issues has a transboundary dimension, and ICIMOD should take care of that aspect. And that was one very strong policy issue. And that the second was that we in this region would need to look at biodiversity as an important asset to overcome the extreme poverty and deprivation. How do we ensure that is another issue that came up. The climate change challenge is something that we probably have all recognized. And we spoke about the need of developing evidence-based knowledge. What does that mean in terms of developing a policy for that? We also highlighted that a policy needs to come out to look at the socio-economic challenges that do face us with regards to resources, power, biodiversity, and the agency role of women. We also were highlighted that a lot of people see the mountains as a source of and an asset for people in the lowlands, and that we need to bring about a change in the attitude to make sure that the assets here are also meant for the people living in these remote areas. What policy do we need in that respect? It would be very nice to hear from the esteemed panelists about some of those ideas. There was a talk about the economic fragility and of the young Himalayan range, and we need to consider this when we plan hydroelectric power and look at local perceptions, disparity, the seismic threat in this area, and the biodiversity. And we also heard about the importance of bonding development with democracy and the need to give voices and choices to people so that our development, as someone said, comes from the bottom with a strong foundation. And then we also heard about the importance of poverty and conflict. And there were a few that today also, which we had practical suggestions, and many of those suggestions probably we have heard, so we all remember them. But at the end, maybe we can try and summarize. So it will be very nice to hear from our panelists their views on how, on some of these issues that were raised in the last 2 days, how can we help ICIMOD and help ourselves to prepare an action plan that is sustainable and that makes sense to people and makes sense to all of us. So I'll start from Sanjay.
I think we don't really need rocket science to understand what we've been listening to over the past couple of days. I think we need to be just good listeners and reflect deeply and clearly. I am not a mountain person. I am from the other side. I am from the plains. I was born in the hills and grew up in the hills, but I lived most of my life is in the plains of Assam, in the valley of the Brahmaputra River, which gets flooded every year, 3 to 4 flood surges. Hundreds of thousands of people lose their homes regularly, several times a year. And so to them, the mountains are not necessarily friendly. And I think this is one thing we need to take back. There is an interdependence. Your region does not stand on its own. It is connected to the universe of our world. And I'll just share very briefly an experience I've had in running one of these rather interesting programs. Some years ago, I was very concerned about the extremely high mortality rate, maternal mortality rate in my state. It's the highest in India. It was 490 per 100,000. It still is the highest. And the problem was caused by lack of access in the floodplains and lack of interest by government and by private players. So we developed an idea and an innovation, which was a boat clinic. We started with one district in Assam. We found that it worked. We got an award for bridging rural gaps, an idea that would bridge rural gaps. The idea was a ship of hope in a valley of flood. We started with one boat and virtually no full-time people, 3 people in the crew. Today we work in 13 districts. We reach 1 million people. It's one of the largest interventions, but it started somewhere. And it's part of a policy now. So I think what we need to do is work or develop ideas that are innovations, but which can be institutionalized because we have to have partnerships with the largest stakeholder. We cannot reinvent government. Even business can't reinvent government. I was very interested and I was a bit surprised that none of our business panel spoke to the greatest resource of the third pole of the Himalayas, which is water. And it's an extraordinary resource that private enterprise, seeks to tap in many ways, including for energy, at very little, shall we say, profit or blessings to those who depend on it. So I think I take away from I'm not also going to be here tomorrow, so I take away from the last 2-3 days a set of conversations and ideas. The first is the interdependence, the issue of multidisciplinary approach, and if I can read my writing, partnership and inclusiveness. These are all things that we've talked about. But now, can we have an institutional connect? For instance, why doesn't ICIMOD work with the IUCN? I am on the IUCN board for India, and we are developing a water dialogue with Bangladesh. Countries need to talk to each other, institutions need to talk to each other and work together. And in addition, as Pankaj Jain in the first session after lunch showed, in the session you last didn't ask, I think get him to respond to any questions, that government departments need to work together. So and we must create an enabling atmosphere of partnerships between institutions, government departments, as well as the NGO civil society sector. And we need to see how you can, this is where Mr. Tolia's point comes in, how you can extrapolate, increase, spread, in a way, the best practices examples to those places and areas which are relevant. I think that is very important for us to do, otherwise we will remain locked in our little pockets. I think that an area we have not discussed enough is the problem or the issue of hydroelectricity and dams in the region. This is a major issue. It is a major political, social, economic problem. It is a concern for many people. How is this to happen without the commons being destroyed, without oligarchies ruling regions in partnership with either private or public industry? How is it that we make sure that the natural resources are protected and the people who depend on it benefit the most? I think this is an important thing, not just for Nepal or Bhutan or India, but certainly also for Tibet and China, and I'm sure for Pakistan. We also need to look at the fact that, as I said on the first day, it's an obvious thing. It's a given, almost. The places which have the greatest resources are home to the poorest people. We're doing something very, very bad, very, very stupid, or something that just doesn't make sense. I think through the practices that we've seen over the past days, which have been portrayed, I think we do. I think we have opportunities of scaling up and enabling those differences to be made. But again, we come back to a point that time and again has been raised by many people in the audience, on the panels: inclusiveness, participation. Make sure the last and the least voice counts, if not the most, at least to some degree. Make sure that voice is heard. Because most people, at least in my own experience, as we travel through the river valleys, in the hills, wherever we go, we find that people want their voices to be heard. In Hindi there is a saying, "Sunwai hona chahiye." We should be heard. It may not mean that they expect you to do something, but that is our responsibility to listen and ensure that the most vulnerable, especially the voices of women, are heard. And that our work, I think, in the next years must be to expand knowledge through training, to expand the sphere of understanding between regions and countries, but on a basis of equal partnership and true partnership.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. It's a very difficult topic, and I'm really grateful to ICIMOD for providing this forum to all of us, where we can talk about our problems, challenges we are facing, and the common ground, which definitely is in all these countries. And I said in the morning, that ICIMOD, in fact, for this region, serves as a mini United Nations, where you can, do all sorts of brainstorming. And then we can also discover which areas are important for us, for learning from each other's mistakes, each other's strengths. For example, India and Pakistan, I would say. Now, in my generation, but I am not much older, even younger people, those who were born in Pakistan, I was born, we do not have that kind of hurt which the older generation suffered. We have nothing against it, to be honest. And people of my generation and younger, when we have meetings with the government, we always say, well, forget about the past. Because if you keep looking into the rear mirror, you go nowhere. Absolutely. And there's no doubt about it. We wasted all these times. Although still, we are sort of engaged in verbal gymnastics between the two countries. But I hope very soon, time is moving fast, time fleets, and in the coming 2-3 years' time, India and Pakistan will become much closer and will be able to exchange ideas. And why this is my first trip to Nepal and first trip to ICIMOD. And I'm really, the other day I was thanking David for this, the way things were organized. He said, well, don't thank me, it's my colleagues. Well, it's a giant work. If ICIMOD and if David, along with his colleague, could do this kind of activity and bring all of us under one roof, why not all of us doing it together? So that's a remarkable achievement, and I really thoroughly grateful. Now, you're saying that the important thing is government-to-government connection. Well, government-to-government connections are part of government and I have part of diplomacy. It's false. When the diplomat says something, don't believe him. You know, this may be far away from that. What's important is people-to-people contact. And forums like this one, they are great, wonderful, because there people meet, exchange ideas, then discover that, well, we have no problem. The government has got berserk. The problem lies with the government and their policies. It is important that whatever we do if we are clear about our perceptions, then sky is the limit. We will achieve what we want to achieve, but we must be clear about the target. Once the target is clear, then it is a different way how to reach that target. We can pick up a difficult road, we can pick up a clearer road, a shorter road. This all depends on the mechanism which we follow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I take it, Mr. Chair, when you started saying that the 3 days of conference and the issue itself showed that this is a transboundary issue. But I do agree, yes it is, and it's more of a common issue as well. But at least in 3 days we're seeing that many of our problems are kind of the same, and probably the solutions in one country could be with a little bit modification, copy to another. But forums like this can provide that chance to know what is happening. It was also mentioned about the development and democracy. I think in the first day I mentioned the program called NSP. It didn't give in details, but I'm glad that at this part, at least we did something. NSP is National Solidarity Program. It's the biggest program of the government of Afghanistan. It is across the country, but it also works in the HKH region. The way it works, it establishes CDCs, Community Development Councils. And each village would have one CDC. The CDC would be surely composed of the villagers, it would have a chair, a deputy, and a treasurer and all that. But the essence of the program is that these community would come together, prioritize their needs, and tell it to NSP. Then once the priority is accepted, 80% of the cost will be paid by the government, that's NSP, and 20% will be paid by the people, either in kind or in cash or land. How they're paying it, the 20% will be paid. The good thing is that the people then accept it as their own project. And then they are the ones who will implement it. They will have their own account, the money will go to their account, will be implemented there. So it's kind of a project for them. It's a training, it's a connection between the government and the people, and it's also their needs. It's not what the government wanted to. Therefore, probably many times bigger projects would not be feasible in such a program because people are giving money and it's difficult for the people to pay for big dams, but at least that sense of being heard is there. However, on this point, I did want to mention that still, even though we have some mechanisms, I do believe in our part of this region, in Afghanistan, we still need to hear them more. What I really wanted to start with was that at least in Afghanistan, if I can make it a bit more specific, one of the other things that probably we need is to connect them. Not looking at it as a way that, oh, let's do a favor to them. It's basically, they are us. It's part of us, so they have to be connected to the center of the country, to the capital, and to the center, to the province. At least in our experience, though we have now roads in some of the provinces of that region, but still in many places between their districts, between the villages, they still need to travel either by foot or with animals. Let me show you one of the pictures I just got from an old friend. I know that she's there. I think her husband traveled to Badakhshan, one of the provinces, and I just wanted to show you, just saw this picture, I wanted to share it with you. I'm not sure if you can see it on there. It's entire kind of a clan going on donkeys and animals, thank you very much, sir, on camels, and even transporting their foodstuff. I was discussing with friends from India, which she was focusing a lot on saying that we should do social development. But what I say, if somebody is bringing their basic needs like food stuff with such a hardship, I mean, those other things come very next if you're hungry. So I'll start from there that, okay, the connectivity is a must. At least in our part, we should do that, either by roads. Not a connectivity in one part, in one or two districts of my country, in Badakhshan, in the winter, you have to go to Tajikistan and then come to this. Because you can't go because of the winter, because of the snow. That either by airports, by airlines, or by roads, however we do it, but we need to connect them that they will be 12 months a year, be connected to the provinces, to the lowlands. What other things where I think we also have many other things with common, the education part. Sure, it is a must and we have to invest in it. The health part, the entire social part of the development of these areas. Probably it would be a bit expensive, but we have to do that. The other thing that we have started, probably I'm not sure if I heard it during these days, is the community-based natural resource management. I haven't heard it, probably many countries have it. We recently started it. I think we had it 30, 40 years ago, then we didn't have it, then we had it. Anyways, now, again, we are starting it. The idea is that if we give the thinking of the ownership of the natural resources to the communities, it will be cheaper, and it will be efficient, and it will be effective. Recently, there has been certain regulations for kind of forest management type of committees, smaller ones at the village level, the natural resource management, even for the watershed. We do have, one of my colleagues talked about the irrigation associations. So those were the things that actually the government wants to invest in them, and they be then responsible for the natural resource of the area there. The safety of that, the keeping of that. At a point of time, in old days, it was also the idea that they will pay for that. But with all these development ideas that we've got now, probably we can think of an idea that either we have to pay them or they can benefit from it, but they will be the owner, they will be using it, and not only thinking of that part of the world, the high mountains, as a benefit for the low mountains, but kind of for themselves as well. In our country, and today I realize that I've seen it in Nepal as well, I think many of these issues are also a lot gender sensitive, because women are involved in a lot of activities, especially even income generating activities. So many of our policies could focus on that part, to support them more, to kind of even, I won't say that support, to even make the life easier for them. Very basic needs. The final thing was, I think, what ICIMOD can do, I think this was the best platform. What are the things it can do can increase this? In specifically to Afghanistan, I'd love to see more involvement of ICIMOD, more programs of that. Unfortunately, that's a bit smaller one. But definitely they can do more, and we can learn a lot from our regional friends, countries, Pakistan, India, Nepal, all that. Is that a lot of problems are kind of common, and there are solutions that we don't need to experiment. We just can take it from you, see what you have done, and see what has worked and what didn't work. So we don't need to do what didn't work there. And it very much won't work. I'll stop it here with saying that I do agree with both my panelists that governments or either people should come closer. I won't argue on any one of them which one should closer, but the way I see it, we don't need to work as a competitor. We do we can work as contributors to each other. Like it's a lot of things are common between us, and they are shared. So we can work it out as contributors to each other, not being only a company. Thank you very much.
Right. Thanks for the invitation. Happy birthday, ICIMOD. The words you've used, Mr. Chair, inclusive, sustainable, democratic, bottom-up, very agreeable, I suppose, with everybody, right? And many have many ideas on what to do. No rocket science to say. Yet it's not happening, right? So why? And I have three hypotheses on this. A, we are the masters of the what, experts of the what to do. Two, we're very weak on the how. We are very weak on how to get agreement amongst the different stakeholders, how to scale up something. And I think there are two areas where one should focus on this how thing. One has to do with markets and why they're not working the way we want them to work. And the second thing has to do with collective action. Being able to solve issues together, to resolve conflicts, to do something together. And there, I think, there's very mundane things like methods, tools, soft skill training, etc. that can be done. The value chain methodology is one contribution. With the Planning Commission of India, we are doing an initiative that is called India Backbone Implementation Network. It's about the same thing, and we bring in our say, cooperation system model that is called Capacity Works. It's again a tool set and methods for that purpose. It's about working on the systems and not in the systems. And most of us, even if I listen to the presentations, we are working in the systems. We are not working on the rules of those games. And the third point is really, and that comes from the last session also, I really think we have to rethink our relationship with the private sector. Because more inclusiveness you can get only through two things. Either through redistribution of taxpayers' money, then of course government is in the driver's seat, or through the active economic participation of people. Means poor people get jobs or become entrepreneurs. It's a very simple thing. And then you are dealing with the private sector, and in that sense, a farmer also is private sector. Yeah? I mean, if it is about livelihoods, it's not only a company, but it's also a company. So if we want upscaling, then we must really focus on the business case for all those in the chain that have a role to play. Each and everybody has to find his own benefit and his own business case, to play in this game. And it's not about the 2%, as the colleagues have said, it's about 100%. Yeah, it's not about charity, it's about the way this business is working. So scaling up in many, many instances means that an increasing number of private actors make a healthy profit by doing the right thing. Doing well by doing good. And in order to get there, you have to remove, and that's a policy issue, you have to remove so many obstacles. Yeah? You have malfunctioning markets. There's a huge role for government to make markets work. You have a bad, as it has been mentioned, business and investment climate. Yeah? You have problems of aggregation, you have red tape, you have corruption. You have to loosen that handbrake, that mental handbrake, that sort of post-socialist hangover of business being something bad. You don't dance with the devil. You have to learn to dance with the devil in order, it doesn't work the other way. There's a lack of entrepreneurship. You drive through the mountains in Uttarakhand and you don't even find a shop that could repair your car. So there's no entrepreneurs, there's no innovation, there's no MSMEs, micro small medium enterprises. So these are obstacles that can be removed. So conclusion, three things: doing well by doing good. Yeah, it must be a business to do the right thing. Number two, work on the system, not in the system. And number three, harness the power of the private sector, and that also means to put him into a certain regulation and to pay attention to the private sector doing the right thing.
Just a short statement. It's a crucial question that why we have failed so far. All the efforts, both global level, regional level, local level. Failure is a disconnect between the people and the governments. So that disconnect has to be addressed. We have been trying to address till we have failed. So I think this is a big question mark for all of us. And next time when we meet, if we put this as a major theme, that why it is happening. For example, the quintessential thematic flashpoint for ICIMOD is three things. One, collect knowledge. Two, generate knowledge. Three, disseminate it. Share it. They cannot go beyond this. Rest of the job is to be done by all of us, the member countries. So the member countries must see to it where the problem lies. How can we reach the ordinary man? Americans have been asking me, we have been giving you billions of dollars. And why do people hate us? And I tell them, well, simple. You spend money on the generals and the elite. The ordinary man or woman would not recognize government. A simple question. Go to them, find out the ways. Where are the bottlenecks and where are the problems? Thank you.
Well, we have heard the views of the panelists on various issues that would influence us to make the action plan. But maybe it's time to open up to the floor. We have another 15 minutes, 20 minutes. So let's see how many people would like to respond. Please, as every chair has said, be very brief, and it'll be very useful if you can help ICIMOD to develop the action plan and keep your comments to that effect. Thank you very much. Please.
I just want to say one experience from China and one lessons. I think it may be useful. For the mountainous areas, the most important thing is to develop a key industry to become an enabler or driving force to develop the areas. So that can be done by the government, also based on the market principles, because the private sectors or public sector, the priority is benefits. So the government can make some preferential policies to benefit this industries. When the industry developed, they can involve the local people and to accelerate the economy. A second lesson is in China, when some mountain areas, when they developed tourism industry and some other processing industry, some farmers' land will be occupied. During this commercial activities, the farmers' benefits will be, to be derived. So the equality and the property rights is very important to protect the mountain people's benefits. Thank you.
I think to comment to all the panelists. And I would like you to reflect and also suggest. If you look at the national policies of the respective countries, and we find invariably that the mountains as a theme, as a feature, and therefore the mountain people also, somehow fail to get the kind of attention they deserve. That's, I think, the main driving force. And what and how we should proceed to see that in our respective national policies, the role which is played by the mountains, both in terms of natural resources and of course the way they have to be sustained, how and what we should be doing to ensure that such a, realization is done, and how the policy processes should be addressed so that the mountains do occupy the place actually. But if you look at the policies, none of the ministries, for example, because they are the driving agents at the end of the day, don't even mention the word mountain, forget about other things. Do you think that will make any difference if the specific reference to the mountain as an asset, national asset, and therefore the need to sustain the mountains, and equally importantly, as I mentioned, so they are the place of the richest reserves, the people who inhabit them are the poorest. So how to address that kind of a rather, would say, strange situation? It's quite a strange situation that poverty is also, degrading the resources. At the same time, the realization has not done. What should be done at the nation?
Thank you very much. I think I agree. I don't see a lot specifically saying about mountains and national policies, but we do have policies or different things which are related to mountains. You have policies about the forests, you have about mines, you have about minerals. As a mountain itself, probably haven't heard it. I'm not sure if other countries have it. Not there. And then specifically about the people there, about the regions. The way Afghanistan is, it's a central government, then we have provincial governments. Recently, the trend has started that each province, which are mostly our central provinces and provinces in the north are part of HPH, each province is developing a specific plan of development for that province. That covers the entire development, usually for 5 years. That is for all the ministries. So that is like a specific type of, you can call it national or local, but it is nationally approved because they bring it to Kabul and it's approved. But that is specific for that area and how they want to develop the area. Rather than that, as an entire mountain, I'm not sure if somebody would.
Yeah. We'll respond to that. Go on.
Thank you very much. Being a sociologist, I honestly feel that the biggest challenge is between the saying and the implementation. We are very good presenters, but in case of implementers, there is a gap. Most of the international agencies like ICIMOD are facing the issue of implementation on ground. There is a need to fill the gaps between the presentation and the realities on ground.
Two, three things, yes, inclusive development, entrepreneurship, partner, and then partnership. I can very well understood, very frequently taught. I think we need to also look at that, what has been done previously. Also to see this public-private partnership, we are trying to see few things we have done previously in our, implementations. The value chain development is not a new concept. The development partners worldwide. And then we also know that this value addition, we were focusing on women, particularly agricultural products, value addition in agricultural products. But I think certain mistakes we were doing, the development partners. And maybe in our the ICIMOD plans, and some of the success stories we have seen today, we have been come across, particularly in relation to Malta products. And then we see the brands. So in all those initiatives, in our planning, we have been training, capacity building, and then helping them to develop products. We never branded, you can see that. We can't find it in the whole region where the products, we train the communities and then they have, promoted products they have, you see, competed the industrial sector as an individual or as a group. So possibly we have done a lot. We need to look at that and see that what were the missing links. And there is another area, we were talking about mountain-oriented technology. Even the public sector, we know that in this whole region, these technologies are developed in the public sector, or it is coming from the multinational, from the international community R&D efforts. But whatever efforts we are making at the national level, we are not really, even in the favored area. Yes, commercialization or multiplication of those technologies, and then bringing private sector, informing them at right times that this technology has this potential, and then letting them to multiply it. This was even in the favored area, this was missing, and what talk about the marginal area? Very less. These two, three things, commercialization from the input of technology point of view, we need to look at it, where the local institutions, public sector institutions are working, and then this value addition, what we have done earlier, what are the missing links, or how we can involve.
We just like to suggest that, ICIMOD has been through so much in Hello. Yeah. We just like to suggest that, after 30 years, I think time is very, very right now to just take one or two concrete steps of getting all these countries in the Hindu Kush to just do an action plan on maybe one or two things. Maybe you can just focus on domestic energy, and we can focus on another program which will give a boost to regional marketing of mountain products. And if we just go on to one or two specific, very specific programs which could be led by ICIMOD in the sense, ICIMOD is not going to implement it, that's not their mandate, but ICIMOD could facilitate the process of getting all the actors together to do a really serious program on domestic energy across the Hindu Kush region, because there are enough good practices to share on how to provide clean cooking gas to people across the Hindu Kush, and also there are enough good practices by now on enlarging the scope of various social development, social business programs, social enterprises. These two things maybe could get scaled up across, and ICIMOD may like to play a role in that. Thank you.
I think we'll have the last question. We have only 10 minutes left. And actually it's important that we also tackle the situation.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I have a question, but I am from Bangladesh. I am telling about my country perspective. As this is the policy making session, so I think ICIMOD is taking a good role because of almost 12% of the total population of the country live in the mountain area, and most of them are living in Himalaya Hindu Kush region. So it is time to take initiatives, as because these people are mostly poor and poorest of the poor. So thank ICIMOD to take this sort of initiatives. And even I must add, in our perspective that ICIMOD very recently has taken and is going to take a project for eco-friendly in our country, eco-friendly tourism. I must appreciate and must thank to ICIMOD, as well as I want to say that whenever I see in this conference, the value chain project is very much appreciable, as because most of the poorest people don't have the market situation or market opportunity. Most of the cases in our country, I have seen that the good products have become rotten. They can't sell it and they can't go get proper value. So, and I think it is a very common phenomenon in this region. So, if we take a very precise way to help these people, then value chain addition simply and cheaply, I think it may be a very good initiative from this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we have a few issues which have been highlighted, but before I try and summarize, remembering that the discussion is meant to help us to identify what are the enablers for an action plan. Sanjoy said that he wanted to have a few words before.
Thank you. Actually, I don't think ICIMOD or any international organization can resolve a national failure, a failure by a national government. No, I think those are things that governments which should have mandates need to do, whether it's in Bangladesh or India or the US. I don't think ICIMOD should get into that. And I speak as somebody who's not in government, who's not in an international organization. Dr. Ahmed, I spoke of 4 groups. So that, interaction at the institutional and international institution level, at the government level, I'm in neither of those. At the civil society and people level, yes, and at the best practices level. Because I don't see a reason why, if IFAD, for instance, which has done remarkable work in the northeast of India, that program, with the inputs of the governments of the northeast, why can't it be extended to Myanmar? No, because Myanmar is opening up. We just heard from the ambassador about how much it's opening up, something we all are aware of. And I think the other thing which is very important, if we're looking at issues we take back or this conference shares, is that there must be the sense of ownership. The ownership, for instance, again I come back to Pankaj Jain's presentation, that was not an externally driven idea. It was internally developed by people in the government, by the stakeholders, that bounced it off different people, the politicians are on board. So there is something like that which is very critical in a region that is as sensitive as ours. So the local ownership of ideas must drive change, not external interventions that promote change. I think this is very important.
I think because of time, we could continue the discussion because it's a very important discussion in the context of the action plan that we would develop together. But there are issues which have been raised which are very, very important, for which we can put into our list of things to do. The most important point to my mind that came out from today is a reminder that we need to acknowledge that we have a common ground and that we are here, or we should be here, to be contributors rather than competitors. This was said by one of our panelists, and I think it's a very, very important point. And one was said that one of the issues one of the issues is being disconnected. I agree with Sanjay that ICIMOD cannot be blamed for the omissions of the government. But I think ICIMOD has a responsibility, or maybe should develop the skills as to how can we become a platform to build and to ensure that this sense of common ground, common growth can take place. That is what I feel has been said, and we would like to place before David, as to how we can work that out. The second point I think that was very important, which was highlighted, was that when you look at our governments in our region, mountain development is not a priority. I agree with one of our panelists that we do have schemes which also benefit the mountain areas. But as we said 2 days ago, the worldview, the issues, the challenges and the constraints of the mountain areas are very, very different. And this is something that we would need to push our respective governments to look at them in a slightly more different and alternative paradigm. And perhaps ICIMOD could help in thinking that how do we put mountain issues into a greater focus in our governments? Perhaps you will need to work out ways and means of how that engagement can take place. The other issue that came out in today's discussion was that we need to ensure that we are listeners, that we reflect on ideas, that we promote innovations, and we build institutions that can carry those ideas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is it order? Yes, that's it. I mean,
Sorry.
Terribly sorry.
So I think the interdependence, the multidisciplinary approach, the issue of diversity, the issue of inclusiveness and participation, and recognizing that the private sector is a stakeholder. Some may have concerns, but as we said, if the rules of the game are to ensure that there's sustainable development for the ultimate good of the poor and those who are vulnerable, then that is a role that we can play. Perhaps we need to be, as someone said, to be connected. A suggestion was thrown that connection in the last few, in the 2 days discussions was, that connection must first be at the ground level to make sure that the voice of the poor and the vulnerable and the residents of these areas do have a role to play, and to make sure that their voice is heard at the national level. As someone said, we must make sure that you are on the table, or otherwise you'll be on the menu. So I think a suggestion was also made that it's very important to link up with some institutions like ICU and IUCN that could be built up. Maybe a time has come for ICIMOD to also see that we can expand our contacts with the world outside, so that the knowledge you have acquired over these last 30 years here could be a valuable role, as the world recognizes that the mountain areas have an asset and a knowledge that can contribute to the world at large. There were a number of issues that came up also that were discussed in the morning, and I would like just to highlight one point which was said in the morning session, and that is, whatever we do, we have to make sure that we are driven by a vision, and that vision allows us to have a sort a practical an approach to finding out practical solutions, and with that we can help to ensure that there is progress. We also said that it's very important to look at institutions and social mobilizations. We heard today some very good examples of how social mobilization was undertaken, and probably these should be an inspiration to all of us of how we can go ahead. There was also an important mention about fostering links that can help us to grow together and to overcome the problems. And that link will be to link, as somebody said, between India and Pakistan, not depending only on the government, but also from people to people. And that's a measure that probably ICIMOD can help and discuss, so that the focus is more and more not only on scientists, not only on research workers, but making it a community-driven, and that together we work to influence the government to have their voice in this. There were a number of challenges which were mentioned, which I thought at a closing session for enablers we need to take into account, which were mentioned. The first one was social mobilization that came in Pakistan, social mobilization that came in India, etc., were not something that was achieved automatically. A lot of hard work had to be put in, and we need to recognize that as a challenge and as a support. The elites and the building up of oligarchies that is happening in many of our areas, and therefore the corruption that seems to pervade all our countries. This is something that we need to handle, and handle with courage, with diplomacy, but also with conviction that we are doing for a better world. The question of benefit sharing for all, so that it's not the winner who takes all, but the poor and the marginalized become those who have an equitable share of what they deserve. The other issue was that, let's not forget The government may have bureaucracies that are thick-skinned. I was part of the government, so I can say that. But there are also within the government people who desire to do some work, and the government can be a facilitator. So let us not knock off the government and think that the world can be changed only by a few of us who have a great heart for the poor. We need both to be able to overcome. And then I think the last point which Rupert had mentioned was let us practice let's have pilots with practitioners. People who have gone before us and who have solutions, they could be our guide. And maybe this is where we could have more solutions. Learning from some of the projects in Pakistan, in China, in India, in Nepal. Let's see what are the best practices, irrespective of where we come from, and build on them and highlight those aspects. And strategic, and at the end, let's try and make a strategic choice together. A choice not for the name of ICIMOD, not for the glory of our personal achievement, but a strategic choice for the well-being and the welfare of all. And in that, for the mountains, my personal view is that probably we are wrong in talking about poverty. Extreme poverty is there, but maybe our indicator of poverty that we have worked out may not be absolutely suitable in these areas. We need to look more into the well-being, because these areas also have a lot to do. So with that, thank you very much. I'm sorry we can have more, but the time doesn't allow us. And on my personal behalf, I really want to thank David and all of you and new friends I met for such a wonderful occasion.